So, as Elizabeth said, I do work in the TV industry, and I've just got back to my hotel from SVT, who are the national state broadcast of Sweden. I'm actually in Stockholm. I normally have an array of computer screens in front of me and headphones and all sorts of clever stuff, but I'm doing this from my hotel room. Uh, this session is intended to be educational. It may be funny, I do tend to try and throw a bit of humor into everything. But yeah, it is a serious technical presentation. There will be some opportunities at the end for questions, but I do want to make this a little bit interactive. If a question occurs to you as we're going through, if you electronically raise your hand, your name will appear at the top of the list, and I will be able to identify you, and then I'll ask you to unmute yourself and ask your question. There may be times that I'll be looking for input from anybody, but if at other times, if you could, as our Zoom host was asking, keep your microphones muted so as to not to interrupt us. So with that, I am going to share my screen and run my presentation. So with a bit of luck, you should all be seeing my screen. Yeah. So to start off with, I'd like to open stating that it is easy to run hybrid meetings.
Very good.
How many of you agree with that statement? So using your own, the yes and no from the feedback within Zoom, how many of you agree with that? So, give me a yes or a no, a thumbs up, thumbs down, if you think that it is easy to run hybrid meetings. So, okay, so far we've got one yes and one no. So part of this exercise is to see the extent to which you understand how to use Zoom. So we've got not very much interaction with that. So okay. When I've asked this before, I've had kind of a mixture of people saying yes and a mixture of people saying no. Of course, what I have forgotten to do is to complete this slide. It's very easy to run hybrid meetings badly. I take part in join a number of different meetings around the world, and I guess like many people have seen very poorly run hybrid meetings. My subtitle, if you like, theme to hybrid meetings, this education session, was that best of both worlds. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that a hybrid meeting must be a quality meeting like the quality meetings that we have when we are in person or when we are online. And my feeling is that the hybrid meeting, if it is not as good, if the experience is not as good as an in-person meeting, or it's not as good as a Zoom meeting, then we are not fulfilling the mandate of running quality meetings. So it is possible to run hybrid meetings that have as good an experience, but it's equally quite easy to have a meeting where really nobody is properly fulfilled. So what we should be trying to do is to make sure that everybody, whether they are in person or online, fully joins in with the meeting, can hear and see as well as if everyone was online or everyone was in person. So it has to be as good as either. So before I start, I have a little poll that I would like to launch, asking you what your level of experience is. So what's your level of experience of hybrid meetings? So have you done a little, some experience, a lot? Are you a fellow hybrid guru? So if you could answer this, this just gives me an idea what I'm pitching at with this meeting this evening. Okay, so we've had about half the people have answered so far. At the moment, we've got kind of more than half have little or no experience. I'll just give you a couple of moments. Okay, so I'm going to end that poll and then I'm going to share that. So this is what we as a group have in terms of our experience. So 58% have little or no experience, 21% have some experience, and somebody, I don't know who this is, may identify themselves later, considers themselves to be a hybrid guru. So let's use that. The first thing that we need to think about. So I'm actually out here in Stockholm delivering some technical training, but I'm a project manager, and as a project manager, what I need to do when I start being involved in a project is think about what the goals are. What is it that we're trying to achieve? And then the next step is, what are the components that we need to think about to achieve that goal? So in terms of the requirements, if you could type your answers up into the chat, what do we need to think about? What do we need to consider when we're planning a hybrid meeting? What have we got to address or to think about or to solve or resolve? So if you could type your answers up into chat, and then I'll be addressing some of those or talking about some of those. Equipment and technical assistance, yep, absolutely. Equipment, audio, absolutely. We need to think about audio, the technology, the equipment. Yeah. Wi-Fi speakers, microphone. Anybody got anything else that they're going to say? Camera, people in the room and those in the Zoom room. 2 laptops and 8 gig of RAM. Position of the cameras, yep, we definitely need to think about that. So actually, virtually, if not all of these answers are to do with the technology, but it's actually there's more than that. Audience experience, yep, absolutely. So that's the goal, is the audience experience. The number of attendees, both Zoom and in person, absolutely. That there have been some meetings where we're only going to have one person join us online, and the impact on the meeting, we asked that person if they could join us in person because it would make the meeting better. So yeah, so very good. You do really need a good number both in the room and online for that to work. Okay, so some of the things that I think we need to think about. We need to think about video. So we need for the people online need to be able to see the people in person, and the people in person need to be able to see the people online. Kind of goes without saying. Audio. I'm very glad that something like the second comment was audio, because the biggest problem that I've seen with most hybrid meetings is audio. That there is no microphone that can pick up clearly audio from anywhere in the room such that the people online can hear clearly what is being said. I've attended hybrid meetings where the audio has been so poor, I've considered leaving the meeting early because I'm really struggling to hear anything. So those are a couple of technical things. I'll talk about how we might address those. But we do also need to think about actually running the meeting and the things that we're going to do during the meeting. So we have to have a timer, and that timer has to be able to time the people in the room and online. That I have been in a meeting where the timing was done with a light at the back of the room, And for the people online, it was completely impossible to see what the lights were. That they had simply no clue about timing. Feedback slips. One of the important things I feel for Toastmasters meeting, for a good Toastmasters meeting, for it to be a good learning experience, is for people to be able to get feedback. If you are all online, there are processes that you can do for that. If you're all in person, you can have processes for that. When you're in a mixed environment, you need to work out how you're going to get those feedback slips both to people online and in the room. Similarly, you need to address voting, and you need to address the awards. So these are all things that we need to figure out, that we need to consider. And if you haven't done that, you have your meeting, but you then don't have a very good, well-run meeting, missing out on many of the issues that you might have. That is, that you might easily address whether you're in a meeting when you're all online or all in person. So what about audio video setup? Here's one I did earlier. So again, with some either little comments, or if you would like to, actually, I think this would work best. So those of you who have had some experience, what I'd like you to do is to raise your virtual hand, and then I'll see you pop up to the top of the list of the participants and tell me about the actual technical setup. So,
Aoife?
So I don't know how to pronounce your name. Ofi? Ofi? Yeah, would you like to unmute yourself and tell us? So what is your technical setup?
Aoife, can you hear me?
I can, yeah, Aoife.
Yeah, so we actually ran our first hybrid meeting last week, and I don't know if anyone else from the club was here. It's not that it was a complete disaster, but it wasn't brilliant either. So we had everything from the person whose Zoom it was we were using wasn't present in the room, and they were late, so that therefore meant that everything was 20 minutes late kicking off. We therefore lost a guest. These are all nightmare type scenarios, but inevitably it's one of those things that your first hybrid meeting, when you set it up, is going to happen. Yeah. Certain things worked really well. The room was very well equipped for it. We had a microphone, so the people who were on Zoom seemed to be able to hear what we were saying. We had the same timing issue you're talking about. Yeah. The one thing that I found, and because I was speaking myself, I was doing a speech, is that the way we positioned where the camera was that you had a very limited, it was almost like you were on, but you are essentially on Zoom as well, but you couldn't move, so you weren't using your stage space. So that was one of the big considerations we're thinking of for our next meeting, which is where can we position the camera in the room that the people who are doing the speech in the room can still use the stage space and aren't, because I was very conscious, okay, it's the people in the room in front of me, but the people on Zoom need to be able to see too. So I was very kind of, not rigid, but trying to keep within that.
Okay, so certainly I can address some of that, that there's a lot of different ways of doing things, but that's some useful feedback. So Martin, what kind of technical setup have you got, and what's your experience?
Yeah, I did put a comment in the chat. We're spoiled that we have 2 to 3 very experienced people that set it up for us. So I suppose that is the situation with us. But we used to have the laptop on the podium. And when you were speaking, you spoke into the laptop. Yeah. And the first time that laptop was changed, I was doing Toastmaster and I couldn't cope with this. Oh, it's like, what's happening, blah, blah, blah. And what was happening was the laptop would be on the podium, the tall person moved it up, the smaller person moved it down, and then it would fall off the podium. So what the 2 ladies and 1 gentleman did was they had the camera, and if you can visualize the picture we're looking at on the screen, the person on the bottom right-hand corner, it's about there where the podium now is.
Yeah.
So you're speaking to the audience out to the left, to where that man is, and your screen is up there, and it works very well.
Yeah.
So the position of the camera is important. The position of the speaker to the camera. The one thing that we do have difficulty at times is getting the lens and picking up everyone in the room.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you. And Mary, would you like to give us a little bit about your setup, what you've managed to do, your technical setup?
We've been running hybrid meetings for quite a while now. We've been running them since last year, and we've managed to get things working well. But we have had some problems. So our setup is generally we use a laptop at the podium, and we use a second laptop or iPad or phone to pick up the audience, to pick up the audience in the room. And then we work with that. We have a USB mic and a USB speaker. And it works, and all of that, of course, with a projector.
Yeah.
With the problems that we've had is where we've got a very high podium, and while the people on Zoom can see us, the people in the room can't. As well as that, you are restricted to moving around, and we've managed to get our setup working well, so that we can get it set up now in about 20 minutes.
That's good going.
But it is extra time setting up and also taking down everything at the end.
Okay, thanks, Mary. So that's actually quite a good point. The setup that I do, I arrive about an hour before the meeting, because there's a lot to set up. I want to make sure it's all working. I need to make sure I've got a good network connection. Something that nobody has already said is you do, of course, need good Wi-Fi in the room. That if you haven't got a decent high-speed Wi-Fi connection, you're going to struggle. There was a meeting where the Wi-Fi that was provided wasn't working, and we ran the meeting through mobile data on my phone, and that really didn't work. It was very poor. So the setup that we've got here, and as I was saying, this is not a definitive way of doing it. It's things that you need to think about. What you can see here is obviously we have a projector. For the people in the room to be able to see what's going on online, you need a projector. So that projector or big TV screen needs to be connected to a computer. So there is a laptop connected to that screen. And in the setup that we have here, that laptop is kind of the main laptop running the meeting, and that sits towards the front of the screen. It's actually to the left of the guy in the light blue shirt that you can see. There is a microphone that the speaker speaks into. This does inevitably mean that the speaking space, the ability to move around is somewhat limited, so that speaker is close into the microphone for decent sound. Also, you will see a kind of a weird looking black circle. That's actually a ring light, and that is providing light onto the speaker. And in the center of that ring light is a camera. It's actually an iPhone, which is picking up the picture from the speaker. And then over to the right-hand side of the image that you can see on the screen at the moment is an iPad on a stand looking back into the room, so that the people online can see everybody in the room. And if you have a look on the projector screen, the top left-hand image is the view that all the people online can see of the people in the room. So this is kind of part of that experience. So this is what the people online will see. So they can see clearly from the person, you can see the center image is the camera onto the person who is speaking. The top left image is the other people in the room, and so on. This is a bit better picture of the setup that I have here. So there is the laptop computer that you can see at the bottom, and to the right of that is a fairly decent loudspeaker. The speaker on a laptop itself is unlikely to be good enough for everybody in the room to hear. If the audio video setup that you have in the room has got microphones, so you plug, loudspeakers, so you plug the HDMI cable into the projector. In some cases, you would have speakers there. That's quite good. If not, you will need a decent speaker to reach everyone in the room. The microphone and camera that are used by the speaker need to be connected to the same computer. So you can see the on the right hand side, that black ring thing, the ring light has a camera in the middle of it, and when it's set up, you can see there is a microphone on a stand, and those two, the camera and the microphone, are connected to the laptop, and that's the main feed, and that laptop is also feeding the projector. So this, I would say, is pretty much the minimum amount of equipment that you might need to run the meeting. And then again, from kind of the back of the room, you can get an idea. And if the speaker is online, then of course, from that laptop, I can control what exactly it is that we're seeing on the screen. And at that point, I would change to speaker view so that we can see the individual speaker, everybody in the room. So it's kind of like that. So what sort of things have we got on our list of equipment that we're going to need? We're going to need, of course, a projector or a very large TV screen. We're going to need at least one host laptop. Now, if you've got quite a number of people joining your meeting and you can share the responsibilities around, I would very much recommend having more than one laptop in use in the room, and one of the participants online, also having co-host rights or some kind of level of responsibilities for looking after the people online. It's quite difficult to be checking that everybody online can hear, text chatting to them without having somebody who is online being responsible for that. You can use a microphone that's part of a laptop, but I wouldn't recommend doing that. I would recommend having an external microphone. The example that I've got, and the example that somebody else was mentioning, is a USB microphone. So I'm actually using a podcasting microphone that sits on a microphone stand. If you have, or you have got some money to pay for like a tie clip microphone with a radio transmitter, that's a pretty good idea. And that also allows the speaker to move around rather more. So the microphone would be clipped onto somebody's clothing. They'd clip the microphone onto their belt or put it in their pocket, and then transmit that back to the computer. You can't get a decent wireless microphone like that for less than 50 quid. You're looking between 50 and 100 pounds for something like that. But that would allow you to have the speaker, the presenter, moving around a little bit more, and yet still having decent sound pickup. The downside to doing that is that you have to keep passing that microphone from person to person. If you want to go a bit cleverer, you could have multiple microphones. So different microphones that you're using in different parts of the room, but that's going to require some kind of mixer so that you can mix between those different microphone sources. Of course, you need a loudspeaker, as I said, and you need at least one webcam. Depending on the lighting in the room, I would suggest considering having a light to throw onto the person who's speaking. Now, I actually use a phone and some software called Camo Studio that allows me to use a phone which has then got a screen on it so that the person who's speaking can look into the camera, which is a phone or an iPad, and see the audience while at the same time being a camera that's feeding the main output. It's a really good idea to have another device in the room, like a phone or an iPad, so that we can see the audience. And of course, you're going to need stands, holders, adapters, and cables. And when you've got all of this kit, you've got to have multiple devices connecting into into Zoom. So logging in with multiple accounts or accounts and not accounts, because they've all got to be connected up to logged into Zoom. Some crucial considerations. To avoid having audio feedback, all but one microphone in the room must be muted. So if you have got other devices, if there are other people in the room who are connecting up, their microphone needs to be muted, or ideally, when you log into Zoom, you choose not to have the audio connection. So if you choose not to connect to audio, then you won't see, you won't hear, and you won't have any interaction with the audio. What you also need to do is to connect, for things to work kind of well, the microphone and the camera need to be connected to the same device so that when people online are in speaker view, it switches correctly. And you need the host PC ideally connected to a projector, extended desktop with the microphone and webcam. It's not a bad idea to allocate somebody online as a co-host and to have another laptop in the room to kind of help out with the running of the meeting. So what about the other things that I said that we needed to think about? So the timer, we need to have the timer able to show lights to people in the room and some sort of signaling to people online. What we've done at my hybrid meetings is the timer sits at the front of the room and uses colored cards rather than anything rather more high-tech with lights, because those colored cards can be relatively easily shown or seen on the room camera. If you can't do that, if you've got lights that aren't clear online, then what I would suggest doing is that the person who is the timer is also online and is sharing and is showing the normal kind of colors with virtual backgrounds to the people online. For feedback slips, the easiest way I think to do this is to use online feedback forms. We use Google Forms, and everybody fills in their feedback online. So everybody in the room has a phone, they use the online forms, they fill in their feedback, and in that way the speakers get feedback. Similarly for voting, by far the easiest way to do this is to stick with the Zoom poll, but that then means that everyone in the room joins with a device, a phone, and votes that way. You can, of course, use some other voting system, again, using an online form. So the feedback slips that we use are a Google form, and this is what that Google form looks like. So people fill in their name, they fill in the feedback, and then those feedback comments are aggregated by the system that I have, and those go back, so we get feedback like this that goes off to the person in a document that looks like that. So that's how I do that. What about running PowerPoint presentations? That very often somebody wants to run a PowerPoint presentation. Well, we've got two situations here. The person is in the room or the person is online. So if the person is in the room, they can have their own computer on a stand at the front of the room, but they will need to be logged in to the Zoom meeting so that they can share that online. And of course, they'd also need to have that available, connected up to the projector. Okay, I'm somewhat thrown by the lighting, that just went yellow and then immediately red. You could have a separate laptop, and of course, if you're online, you would just share your screen as normal. So I'm afraid I'm completely thrown now. Okay, we've got a yellow light back. What about contests? Contests are going to be very challenging to be run online. That I am unconvinced that contestants, a mixture of contestants online and in the room, will be equal, will have kind of equal treatment. I can't really see that. So I can see that a hybrid meeting would work fine if you've got visitors joining online. You could even have judges joining online and in person. But my personal take is that all of the contestants should be either in the room or online for them to have an equal experience. To run a contest, particularly if you've got judges in person and online, is going to take basically twice the number of people you're running the meeting. You're going to have you're going to have ballot counters in the room and ballot counting online. You're going to have somebody coordinating in the room and online. So it can be done. It's not particularly difficult, but it will need twice as many people involved and a very high level of coordination and of processes around that. Timing, for example, if you've got contestants in the room and online, that timing has got to be coordinated so that works correctly. But my understanding is that in the coming year, that contests have to be either online or hybrid. If you're looking at an area contest where there's not going to be terribly many participants, my feeling is that it would be better to run that entirely online rather than to have a mixture of people in person and online, unless you have got enough people involved in the process to be able to support that mixture of online and in person. Okay, I wanted to give an opportunity for some questions, so I'm going to open this up for questions. So I'm going to start sharing. And again, what I would like to ask you to do is, if you've got a question, you can raise your virtual hand and then I'll ask you to speak. And if you can't work out how to do that, you can turn your camera on, unmute yourself and just shout. So Elizabeth has unmuted her microphone. I'm not sure if that means that you're, yeah, and we've got a hand up. So Elizabeth, over to you.
Thank you for a very, very interesting presentation. I've got several questions, but I'll ask one.
Yeah.
Could you say something about the cost of all of this? Because you've mentioned equipment and all that, but what does it cost? Or what's the, give us some idea of the lower end and the higher end.
So if a club is having to buy the expensive bits of kit, so if the club is having to buy computers and projectors and so on, I would say, my experience, there are no clubs that could afford to buy laptop computers and so on. So this is only going to work if some of the club members have got some of that equipment that they can bring along. Microphones, definitely it's worth spending £30–40 on a podcasting microphone. It is worth spending £20 or something on an LED light so that you're lighting the person, and some cables. So you could do this for, I don't know, £100 or something, the kind of minimum amount of equipment. But that would rely on some of the members bringing along some of that equipment, like an iPhone that can be used to view into the room, you don't have to buy microphone stands or tripods. It's easier if you can. And what you can also do is, if you've got a selfie stick, you can take the holder off the end of a selfie stick, fasten it onto a microphone, onto a tripod or a mic stand or a lighting stand, and use that to view the room. Not a bad idea if you've got a power bank, because a phone is unlikely to last an entire meeting without external power. So the amount of equipment I take along to a meeting runs to a couple of £1,000, but that's because that's just the equipment that I've got that I'm going to take along. So a lot of money, but it can be done for a couple of hundred. Next on the list, Mary, please go ahead.
Kate, thanks very much for your presentation. I'm just going to go back to where you finished, actually. And I'm not sure whether this is really for you or for Elizabeth. I'm just wondering, what is the ruling on how contests should be held? We had a meeting last week where there was a mention of a decision being made, or a vote being taken on whether they should be online or hybrid.
Mary, I can take that question.
Yeah, thank you.
We had, first of all, clubs can run meetings in any format. The legal entities, they can do what they wish. The TI asked the DEC to choose between virtual or hybrid, and our DEC chose, at the D71 DEC, chose as follows. Area contests will be held virtually, so that's online. Division contests will be also held online, but the district contest, which will be held at a conference, will be hybrid. So it's virtual, hybrid. That was the decision that was made at the DEC last Saturday.
Okay.
I can't say that that I oppose that. I think that's an ideal, least worst option, I would say. So, okay, Martin. I'm slightly conscious that I might run out of time for questions. So, Martin.
Okay, just very briefly then, there's on that last point, Kate, before I mention my own question, for clubs, there was no ruling made, Elizabeth, is that right?
Sorry, no, clubs can
do what they want.
They do what they want, face-to-face, hybrid or virtual.
Okay, very briefly, and this is a technical question, and we're spoiled. I see Nuala there on the call, so we're spoiled with the likes of Nuala and Judy and others in our club. I could understand that picture you showed where the camera was looking down on the room. What is the role of the circular camera?
So the big round circle thing was actually, it's a ring light. It's a circle of LEDs that are lighting the person who's standing at the microphone. And so there is, within that big round circle, in the middle of it is actually a phone that was looking at the person speaking. So the person delivering a speech is standing at by a microphone that's on a stand with a light in front of them and a camera in front of them. And in that way, they are being seen very well by the people on online.
Okay, thank you. My other comment was, very briefly, I know you're stuck for time, is that say you have a hybrid contest and you have 3 judges in the room and 3 on Zoom. My thought would be that when the judge and the counters go into the room, they will take the ballot from the 3 people in the room, but they would have a laptop in there in the room where they could take the ballots from the people on Zoom.
Yep, that's a way that you could do that. So they're doing both the in-person and online roles. So Aidan.
Thank you.
I've had a look at this with my club president, who has over 20 years experience in hardware and software. Excellent presentation, Kate, and thank you very much for it. But our big problem was with wireless, security wiring, security licensing, and is there a bigger problem with security licenses, if I'm using Kaspersky, somebody else comes in using Norton.
So I know what Kaspersky and Norton are. So
They're-
wireless.
they're
Are we talking
leading
about
edge.
wireless microphones? Are we talking wireless microphones? Or are we talking Wi-Fi?
We're talking wireless microphones, Wi-Fi connectivity, and
Okay.
inter-machine connectivity.
Right.
On the
So in
TV
the case of
standard.
microphones, different countries have different arrangements and permissions of channels and frequency allocations to wireless microphones. There really isn't a security issue. The only issue is electromagnetic interference, so that you're not interfering with other people's use of that. If you can buy the microphone in the country, it's licensed for use in the country. From a point of view of Wi-Fi, that you have Wi-Fi in the room. If you have concerns about security, then you can set up a thing called a virtual private network. But I would not be concerned about that myself, unless I was in like a properly public Wi-Fi. But a VPN would do that. I have got the red light, but I've got a question from Nuala as well. So Nuala,
Thank you.
over to you.
Thank you, Kit. As Martin said, we're the same club, and just a couple of things I sort of want to say. We tried the iPad, we tried the laptop on the podium, but what we've come down on is having two webcams attached to two laptops, because it takes the laptop off the screen, off the podium, and allows room for the speaker to move and whatever, and the webcam gives you that bigger sort of area and allows there to be a bit more movement and a bit more vision, etc., etc. Now, affordability, I bring one of the webcams. We have bought a webcam. I've contributed a spare stand I had at home, and you're right, our laptops are our own laptops. And just as you were talking last week or the week before, I bought a little circle and I'm using it right here, right now. That's with the brightness. A little circular thing that had a sort of a neck on it. And while you were talking, I was able to detach the wobbly neck for the phone and attach my camera into it and turn the light on. But I need then two USBs. So that's another thing then, to have a USB connector.
Get a little USB adapter, okay, thanks, Nuala. So we're on the red light. So I just wanted to add a point that a good way, if you want the speaker to be able to see the online people, if you've got a spare iPad, you put the iPad on the lectern and just use that so that the person who is delivering a speech can see the people online and get their reactions. So I've gone over my time, so I would like to hand back to Elizabeth, and over to you.
Thank you. And I hand back to Madam Training Coordinator. I was going to say, because this is such an important topic, and it's such an important one for us, even though the light is red, if anyone had a burning question, I would just sort of override the timer and say we'll take it. Only because I think this is really important to. I
think it's important for me to say that we have allowed a 10-minute question time, and we have not gone beyond that. So there's time still.
Okay. What I would say is that the first time you set up a hybrid meeting, allow way more time than you think it might take you to set it up. Make sure that you've allocated some people joining online to join like at least half an hour early, because there are things that you're going to have forgotten and it's not going to work so well. So yeah, Elizabeth, you put your hand back up again. I'll come to you, Nuala, in a second. I
do, because some clubs are fortunate to have expertise. Many clubs do not. What sort of advice do you give to clubs who don't have expertise and they're basically trying to fiddle with things and do things themselves? It seems that they're going to need more than an hour. They may need an hour and a half. Or would you suggest that anyone wanting to do this should seek expertise to help them?
Kind of don't want to kind of blow my own trumpet here, but if you don't have expertise, you are likely to have a poor experience all round. that if you just try to use an iPad or a phone or a single laptop, the likelihood is the people online aren't going to be able to see or hear very well, and so on. So if you really don't have that expertise, stick to staying on Zoom or try and get everybody to attend the meeting in person. But I think I have attended really bad hybrid meetings and wished I hadn't bothered, because I really couldn't appreciate it very much. So Nuala, you had a question.
Sorry, Kit, but to say too, from our own experience, I think trial and error has helped us to get where we are. But I think if you practice at home, because you've got your TV screen and you've got your things, and you could try and set it up. What we also do is we try to position the speaker in such a way that they can see the screen. So it's sometimes we have the speaker on the other end of the room to where the screen is, and put the camera that's viewing them in front of them, so that people can see them as if they were looking at the screen.
Okay, the problem with that is the audience won't be able to see the people online. So if you've got somebody...
Well, what we do is we put sort of like people either side. So we have like people coming this way, and then the person speaking's at the top, and the screen's at the bottom. So the people are in the middle. So it's created like a rectangular sort of situation. Now it's trial and error again, but we have made a decision, myself and the VP met last night, and we have made a decision for our own safety and for our own mental well-being, that we are going to opt for all judges online. Yeah. If possible, all speakers in the room, all contestants in the room for our contest this time. And that's how we're going to run our hybrid, because our hybrid contest, because it allows us to go for judges outside the area, but it also allows us, it allows us to have a little bit more flexibility. We only have one room. We don't have breakout rooms. We don't have anything else. So, I mean, I think we all have to just try and help each other in relation to this, and sort of work together and throw out what we're trying to do, or what we're thinking ourselves. And that way people might say, I might try that. Like even tonight, speaking about the little circular thing, I thought, I have that sitting in the corner. I should try it.
And what I would say is that you're a good demonstration of decent lighting, making a very visible and easy to see image, Nuala. So I don't, because I don't have any ring lights and any stuff with me, but your camera image looks, really good. So.
Thank you very much for that. There was a question from Michael. How do you collect payment from folks online versus in the room?
Not really. It's a question for anybody. I haven't been at a club where we've done anything other than collect payments kind of by monthly standing order.
Mary?
I think I know what Michael was alluding to there, and that is a problem where the cost of the room, when you have a smaller number in the room now, because some of the participants are on Zoom, and that has become an issue certainly for our club.
We've had the same problem, and we actually had to move from a very nice, very comfortable hotel, and we've got an equally nice and comfortable room above a pub in the in the same town, the same area, and the cost is a quarter of what we were paying in the hotel. And so now we actually make money at those meetings, so it actually has solved our problem that we're able to pay now for the Zoom and for the room. Now that may change, but right now we're actually making, and we still don't have major attendance in the room. We still have some people online, but it's eased our struggle and it's eased our issues considerably, because we didn't feel, given what we charge for a yearly subscription, that we could charge people who were coming on Zoom more money, because it was being covered by the yearly subscription.
Okay, so there's a comment being made in the chat from Hazel about using headphones, wireless headphones. Not sure that offers anything beyond having a speaker in the room. That as long as the microphones of any other devices in the room are disabled, you've not connected to audio, I don't see that being a problem. And certainly, I wouldn't want to sit looking like this for the entire meeting.